Two Kangals, flown from Turkey at enormous cost, abandoned after 14 days, adopted and returned over and over and over again for 3 full years, until a cowboy walked into that shelter, took off his hat, dropped to one knee, and whispered, "Lord Almighty, what are these?" This is the story of Boss and Lady. They came from the mountains of Turkey, bred for thousands of years to guard, to protect, to stand between a flock and whatever darkness dared to approach. They were not pets, they were not lapdogs, they were Kangals, one of the oldest, most powerful livestock guardian breeds on the face of this earth, and somebody had paid a fortune to bring 2 of them, a male and a female, across an ocean, across thousands of miles, to start something new. But that dream lasted exactly 14 days. They're too much, I can't handle them. And just like that, 2 of the most magnificent animals ever to set foot in this country were dropped off at a shelter. No explanation, no apology, just gone. That was the beginning of the longest nightmare of their lives. The shelter workers didn't know what to do with them. Nobody did. These weren't golden retrievers. These weren't friendly, tail-wagging dogs who jumped into your lap and licked your face. These were 200-pound Turkish mountain guardians with black masked faces, ancient eyes, and a presence that made grown men step back when they walked into the room. People would come in, they'd see the dogs, they'd ask about them. What are they? Kangals, livestock guardians, originally from Turkey. Can I meet them? And then 3 days later, a week later, sometimes just 48 hours later, they'd come back. They're too independent. They won't listen. They're too big. I don't think this is going to work. Every single time, back to the kennel, back to the cold metal bars, back to waiting. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into something nobody at that shelter had ever seen before. 3 years, 1,095 days behind kennel walls for 2 dogs that were built to run across open hills, to feel the wind on their faces, to guard a flock under an open sky. The shelter workers had stopped counting how many times they'd been adopted and returned. Some said it was close to 100, others said more. The paperwork alone filled an entire drawer. Every time a new family took them, there was hope. Every time they came back, something inside that shelter felt a little heavier. The male, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like ancient amber, had stopped reacting to new visitors. He would sit, he would watch, but the excitement was gone. He had learned what excitement led to. The female was quieter. She stayed close to him, always, as if the only thing left in the world she trusted was him. And in a way, that was true. I see you still haven't subscribed. Honestly, that breaks my heart. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next is something you need to see. It was a Tuesday morning when the door opened. The shelter worker at the front desk, a woman named Carol who had worked there for 11 years and had seen just about everything, looked up from her paperwork. A man walked in, tall, broad shoulders, cowboy hat. He reached up, took the hat off his head, and nodded at her. "Ma'am?" Carol blinked. "Can I help you?" "I've got a cattle ranch about 40 miles east of here," he said, turning the hat slowly in his hands. "Got a few hundred head of livestock. I need a dog, not a pet, a working dog, something that'll guard my herd, keep the coyotes away, and maybe," he smiled, "put up a decent fight when I'm in the mood to wrestle something." Carol stared at him for a long moment. Then she set down her pen. "Sir," she said slowly, "I think today might be your lucky day." She led him down the corridor, past the barking, past the chaos, all the way to the back, where it was quieter, where 2 large shapes sat in the shadows of a kennel that had held them for 3 years. The man, his name was Daniel, stopped walking. He stood there, just stood there, staring through the kennel door. The male dog looked up at him with those amber eyes. Daniel reached up and took off his hat. Slowly, he lowered himself down to one knee on the concrete floor. "Lord Almighty, what are these?" "Kangals, livestock guardians from Turkey. They were imported specially, cost a small fortune to bring them over. The original owner gave them up after 2 weeks. Daniel didn't look away from the dogs. How long have they been here? Carol was quiet for a moment. 3 years. The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes, and Carol noticed this, she would tell people about it later, glistened. 3 years? He repeated, quietly, like he was saying it to himself. They've been adopted many times, Carol continued, but they don't understand the breed. They're not typical dogs. They're independent. They're powerful. Most families couldn't handle them. Daniel nodded slowly. He was still looking at them. The female had moved closer to the kennel door now, watching him with calm, careful eyes. There's one more thing, Carol said. They're a package deal. We don't separate them. Whoever takes them takes both. Daniel finally looked up at her. His eyes were wet. He didn't try to hide it. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "how could anyone ever separate these two?" He looked back at the dogs. "You," he pointed at the male, "your boss." He pointed at the female, "and your lady." The day Boss and Lady left that shelter, it rained. Carol stood at the window and watched Daniel load them into his truck. She had processed hundreds of adoptions in 11 years. She had never cried at one before. The ranch was everything these dogs were built for. Open sky, rolling hills, the smell of grass and livestock and freedom. Boss stepped out of that truck and froze. He lifted his nose to the air, his chest expanded. Something deep in his ancient instincts, something bred into his bloodline over thousands of years of Turkish mountains and cold nights, woke up. Lady stepped out beside him. They looked at each other. And then they ran, not away, not in fear. They ran because they could. No walls, no bars, just open land and wind and space. Daniel watched them go, hat in hand, smiling the widest smile of his life. Within a week, Boss and Lady had claimed every inch of that ranch. They patrolled at night, they positioned themselves between the herd and anything that moved in the dark. Coyotes that had been a problem for years disappeared. Whatever was out there took one look at those two massive silhouettes on the ridge and decided not tonight. And during the day, Daniel wrestled Boss in the tall grass while Lady watched with dignified disapproval. Boss always won, Daniel always laughed. They were home because someone had finally looked at them and seen not a problem, but a gift the world hadn't deserved yet. Some dogs carry ancient purpose in their bones, purpose no kennel wall can ever erase. Boss and Lady weren't broken by 3 years of rejection. They were just waiting for Daniel, because the right match doesn't just change a dog's life, it changes yours. Would you have taken both or walked away like the others? Tell me in the comments.